Today's December 24th. It's a Saturday, and there are three subject matters that I need to keep vetting in order to become a consistently profitable day trader. What I've noticed is that I can just trade, and then I would either make money or lose money. It's simple as that. Now, now the idea is to improve my odds. I've come to a road now where uh, I can selectively choose to do the trade or not to trade. And I can hold off on adding or cutting losses or cutting my trade fast. And I can either add or uh, do nothing. So I've come to the road at this point now to become more selective about my trading. I reviewed approximately about 17 months of trading record that I've kept, and about 90 heavy losses were caused by adding to a loser and holding on to a loser for too long. Had I avoided uh, those heavy losses 80 to 90 times, I would have been substantially wealthier today. Because these heavy losses were significant amount, meaning that I would accumulate 1 or 2 weeks, even months of gains, and then they'll be eradicated by 2 to 3 days of severe drawdowns. And I need to keep exploring this stop losses as much as possible. And one of the things that I'm concerned about when I add a stop loss is that most likely I've entered a trade incorrectly or too early. If I get in there too late, it means that the trade has already have moved into my direction, and there will be virtually no drawdowns whatsoever prior to the trade going in my direction. And so the biggest concern that I have is pullback when a trade is made. So um, this video is going to be essentially sell. So how do I sell? That's the most important part right now. That's essentially what's happening. So even if I'm in the green, let's say I'm up like 5%, it means that if the trade goes in the other direction, I need to actually exit as well. So this exit is essentially the same as not being in a trade and being in a trade. When I look at this situation of day trading, whether I'm whether I'm in a trade or not in a trade, it's the same thing. Okay? So when I'm in a trade and the trade moves down and I suffer a drawdown, then there's a stop loss. Also, oh, there's a little circle there. Why is that? Well, that's weird. Huh. Anyway, well, that's interesting. So essentially that's quite odd. And the interesting thing is that when I have entered and I have made a gain, it is possible for the trade to reverse. And at which point I need to preserve my trade. Okay? So this is a very, very important matter of trading. So the stop loss is going to be the same as, so when my account has increased in value, and that increase in value is reflected on my account, and when the account experiences a drawdown from that point, even though I may be up for the day, it is essentially the same thing as suffering a stop loss. And therefore, I must be vigilant in the way that I handle this situation. So now that I've related to the gains that I have, the gain that I have to the entry that I perform, and when I enter, and whether it's immediately suffering a drawdown or not, is essentially very, very similar to how the trade is made. Now, I can apply the same principles whether I'm up or whether I've just entered a trade. That means solving the situation for the drawdown when I initially enter is similar in nature to when I have accumulated my gains and I need to preserve the amount of gain that I have now. So thinking in terms of actually entering into a trade. Now, when I've entered into a trade, and it needs to occur when I recognize it, not because it has drawn down a certain amount, which I have consistently have done for the past about 90 times within a 17-month period of trading, full-time trading. So I watched a video earlier today about the professional day trader, and he was on vacation. And what he did was, one day that he was observing the market to see whether he trades or not, he did not trade because he didn't see a promising signal that allowed him that he was comfortable with making the trade. Then the following day, he saw something that he recognized as a promising sequence of trades that he can make. And then within a matter of less than 10 to 15 minutes, he was able to make the gain and exit the trade. So professional day traders talk about that. And the group that I belong to, which is UK spread betting, and they talk about don't leave anything to chance, essentially. And that falls in line with how I handle with a trade that does not go my way. But the reality is, what I need to be is more selective about. So essentially, stop loss is equivalent to the way that I trade whether I select my entry. Stock selection is going to help me to essentially define what type of gains that I have, and this is something that I'm now analyzing and assigning a significance into the stock selection, as well as being able to avoid selling for a loss by looking at a particular signal and then making sure I'm on the backside. And being on the backside is more important than getting into the front side, just lazily waiting for the dip to finish its cycle, because that cycle may not finish as I expected, because that severe drawdown could occur like this 90 times that I've suffered. So the reality is I have to see the price action, and then look at a point where I say to myself, based on the chart patterns, the chart is telling me that this is the front side and I need to wait a little bit. And then when it's on the back side, and when the chart is telling me it's about to be on the back side, and there is no guarantee that it's essentially a backside until after the fact. After the fact, and when my when the trade is moving in my direction, that I can conclusively say, after I exited, after I see it, after everything happens, then I can say, oh yeah, that was the backside. But before that occurs, then I have to make sure, because nothing is 100%. Something could happen. Something could happen that causes the entry that I thought it was the backside to essentially still be on the front side, and there could still be a dip that occurs. And so, in order to better use the stop loss that I use, then I need to make sure that I need to be as close to the backside as possible by suffering the least amount of drawdown, because the drawdown will impact the stop loss, and that stop loss could take a significant chunk out of my account, and then afterwards, after it takes a significant amount of account, and then it may just reverse and go in the direction that I originally had intended to. So that's one way. That's one way of mitigating these situations, and so I can uphold the ratio of my trades by improving whether I'm on the front side or the back side of a particular situation. Usually, for instance, as an example, uh, when a trade is made, I'm mostly looking for either a rip and a dip, or a dip and a dip and a rip, a rip and a dip, or dip and a rip. When the trend is going down, as in Dow Jones or Nasdaq, usually what will happen is that the trend has been established when it's going down. That means when the trend is going down, I'm looking for an opportunity to wait for the backside of a movement in the stock, which has essentially picked up with a exuberance for individuals who are attempting to buy. And then when that happens, because it is essentially still in a channel of downtrend, when it reaches a certain point, what I can do is choose to go with a put that allows me to take advantage of the stock dropping when the stock is merging back into its trend. And that, based on the data that I've seen in my trading records, coincides with the trend of a general trend of the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq. Because without external stimulation, the stocks will generally behave in the manner of how the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq and other indices behave, which represents the totality of the group of stocks that each of these indices represent. And therefore, the complexity of minimizing my drawdowns is essentially making the right timing to forego the front side and making sure that I get on the formation of the backside. And just in case, the insurance is to ensure that the big percentage of the gains that I will have by going on the back towards the backside, formation of the backside, can be mitigated by placing a stop loss in cases where the smaller percentage of my trades that are going against my thesis. That is essentially a worthwhile stop loss placement. So that will mitigate the heavy losses that I have by making better selections and better timing, and essentially doing a better selection of the timing, and then setting the stop loss such that my improvement of reducing the paper cuts will ensure that there is smaller losses and improve my chances of making a gain. That is the first portion of entry. The second portion is maintaining the gains that I have and consistently monitoring while the trade is in place, looking for certain pullbacks, whether it's going to be the first tier pullback where it's a small little dip before it continues, or is it going to be the generally speaking, a major pullback that could surpass the entry point that I have, and looking at it on a general perspective of maintaining. Essentially what's going to happen, possible, is that somehow, so there could be some major news that occurs that would essentially flip the bias of the morning stock trade and then inverse it past the point where I bought it, at which point I could suffer a loss. So That is the critical part. That this then the second part is essentially knowing, merging all these together. These three ideas that I have are finally forming into just like God. God is God, the Father, the Spirit, and Jesus Christ, all in one. And that's God right there. See, it's forming. All these things are forming into a single entity. A single entity, which is essentially one good trade. So how would I so it's a so all this together, it's forming into it's essentially it's how should I place this? This I'm just getting goosebumps right now. I don't know if you can see that, right? I'm recording this. I'm getting goosebumps into forming an idea now of the proper method. So how should I put this together? I'm placing together the major themes, the three major themes, and placing it into together and into a single entity. So I'm taking three particles and merging it into a single particle. What is it called? It's fusion.